Okay everyone, so in this next video, I just want to work with adding some platforms. So let's try to remove the background image that has a gradient, the one that we test out here, and I'm just going to remove that. Just going to comment this out for the meantime. I'll be deleting that later on. And I already have a sample tile set that I took from one of the games that I'm trying to work on. And now let's try to work with the physics for creating a platform. So we do have our create function here, and let's add a variable from where we will store a static type of physics body in our project. So we'll have this physics that add, and we're going to access this static method inside of the phaser framework, and this should be creating a new static physics group instance. And if you try to go and work with reading through the documentation, it will say that we do have two types of physics bodies in the phaser framework, and that will be dynamic and static. And this is referring to the static physics group, and it will be a type of physics bodies. Okay, so we have dynamic and static, and specifically for static body, it will have, let's just go to our, let's try to test. We do have our player here, so let's try to go and add platforms. Let's just call platforms, and let me just go format this with prettier. And let's have a dot create method. Let's start to pass in some values here. Let's start to use a set scale method, and we would want to have that set scale to 2, and then let's have a refresh body method also, and let's make sure that we try to access the image that we have in our, let me just rename this to platform.png just to make it easier to access. And we're going to pass in here, we're going to use here ground, and the second value argument will be assets platform.png. What are we going to see if we go back to our browser? So we do see that we do have a platform now getting rendered on the browser, right? And I think it's a little too big. So if we try to go back to our ground here, let's say I would say 100 by 200. What will that be doing for us? And you would see it's only positioning the platform, but the size is not getting changed. So can we say that the scale will be 0.5? How big will that be if we have that scale to 0.5? And we do see we now have a block or a smaller platform that we can play around with. Let's just go back to that, let's say 400 to 400 ground, and then let's go back here and let's see what will happen. It's now a little bit on the middle, so let's try to move it a little bit horizontally, and if I remember it correctly, we can try to do that by, let's give this a 380 position. Still not yet enough, so I think we can try to play around with this. Let's have 350 just to at least align it almost near to our player, just to test things out. Let's have 330 perhaps. So a little bit of familiarity with the way we can try to have some platforms. And we do see here that we're now able to render a platform or an image that has that box of a ground. Now, let's have to first try to fix the issue here from where the player is going outside bounds. So let's try to go back to our code here, and let's try to look at how we can try to do that. And we can try to go set up here. Set up here below the player. Let me just move this a little bit. Let's have this moved a little bit here. And let's go try to access a method in the phaser framework. Let's have 0.2 called player set bounds, and let's have a set collider or set collide world bounds, and this is going to be a boolean, or we're going to pass in a boolean of value of true. So what will happen if we try to do that? And we do see now that the player is bouncing on the world bounds. So this means this is the world, right? So it now bounces on the world bounds, but we're not yet able to work on the platform. Now let's just try to test how to add some physics that can collide not only the world from where the player is, but also adding some physics that will be allowing us to collide with the player. The player will be colliding with platforms. So you would see, if we try to look at this, this is a this keyword accessing a physics property that is accessing a dot add property and accessing a method that is targeting to add some arguments from where we're passing in the player and the platforms. So let's try to test what will this be doing if we try to play this. We do see now that the player is now on top of the platform. So that's working.